All right. Good morning, good evening, good afternoon. My name's Scott. And just to make sure I'm chairing the right meeting and everything, does anybody know what day it is?
Scott, I can
Yes?
help you out this time,
Good.
okay? Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everyone. My name is Debbie. I am an alcoholic, and today, this very day, is Marvelous Monday. Everyone have a great meeting.
Thank you, ma'am. I'm on time. All right. Okay. My name is Scott. As I said, I am an alcoholic, and my sobriety date is June 10th, 2019. Welcome, everyone, to today's Threads of Recovery workshop. I've stated I'm an alcoholic. Do we have any other alcoholics in this meeting? You can wave, smile, jump up and down. Wow, I got a whole screen full of friends. Good deal. Okay, we're going to acknowledge God's presence with a moment of silence, and I will follow that with the set aside prayer. Lord, help me set aside everything I think I know about you, everything that I think I know about myself, everything that I know about my fellows, everything I think I know about my own recovery for a much needed new experience in you, myself, and my fellows, and a new experience in my own recovery. Help me see the truth. Amen. 1058 Threads of Recovery continues to offer 3 virtual workshops a week. To be included in our weekly email, send your request to threads1058@gmail.com, and this will keep you up to date on all our workshops. The group follows the 12th tradition. We stick to our singleness of purpose. We ask that everyone refrain from profanity when sharing and any activity that may be distraction to the meeting. Please turn on your cameras if possible. We'd love to see your smiling face. The 7th tradition states every AA group ought to be fully self-supporting, declining outside contributions. The contributions help to cover our group expenses, but 7th tradition is more than simply paying for rent and other group expenses. It is both a privilege and a responsibility of individual groups and members to ensure that our organization at every level remains forever self-supporting and free from outside influence that might divert us from our primary purpose. The monetary amount of each contribution is secondary to the spiritual connection that joins us in unity with AA groups around the world. This is an open meeting. Open meetings are available to anyone interested in Alcoholics Anonymous program of recovery from alcoholism. Non-alcoholics are welcome to attend open meetings as observers. And now it is my great pleasure to introduce today's speaker, Bill H. Come on down, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Scott. My name is Bill. I am an alcoholic, and happy birthday. What can we sing? If you weren't here in time for the singing, you need to get here earlier next time because you don't have to go to Salt Lake City to listen to the Mormon Tabernacle Choir. You can tune in here at 5 minutes before the hour, almost every Monday, and hear us sing happy birthday to somebody. What we lack in musical skill, we more than make up in joy and sincerity. Hey, I have a sobriety date as well. It's March 18th, 1981, which may sound like a long time to some of you, but I have to caution you. Don't get too carried away. I woke up today and there I was. You will be grateful to know that I asked God for help early on. I didn't used to do that. I went to AA in January, took a couple months to hear you people say it's the first one. So I learned to stop starting. I learned to stop starting by not taking the first drink. And so I got, sober in March of 81. And I had a sponsor. I didn't have a choice. They gave me a sponsor leaving my first meeting. I didn't know you could say no. Good thing. Good sponsor. Took me through the 12 steps that summer. We went through the 12 steps again in the fall. And I was, feeling pretty good, 6 months without a drink. The divorce was going better, the second one. The kids were starting to speak to me. Well, at least they'd answer the phone. I'm not saying they'd speak to me, but at least they started answering the phone. That was a step in the right direction, Dennis. And I quit asking for help. And I didn't know I quit asking for help. See, my self-will tells me we don't need help, but I don't hear it. I just stop asking for help. It's mysterious. Maybe none of you go through that. Maybe saying this out loud to you is going to shock you into, oh my, I do that too. The reason I bring this up, though, is we have to make a decision. We have to make a choice. We have to make a choice to ask for help. It's not automatic. And today we're talking about step 3 in our 12 book. Thank God it's only one book. Our 12-step study from the big book, not a small book, but it's one book. It's a big book. Sponsorship, working with others. And we're taking different thoughts, different sentences, different phrases out of chapter 7, working with others, and kind of using that as a lens to go back and look at steps 1 through 11, and then ultimately step 12 in the big book. It's called Sponsorship, Working with Others, a Stewardship of Hope. And you may recall that the first sentence in the book, seemingly hopeless state of mind and body, is what they called themselves. And then you get to page 164, and we said, we realize we know only a little. Did you check your book? Look at page 164. It's right in the middle of the page. We realize we know only a little. Gulp. That's kind of deflating if you've got an ego like mine. But our fellowship often forgets we were seemingly hopeless. Our fellowship wants to forget we know only a little. We hear people talking all the time. Oh, I've heard enough of that drunkalog. I just want to hear about recovery. Well, what you want and what you need, what I want and what I need are two different things. We need to continue to hear about the problem. And the newcomer needs to hear us share about the problem, the so-called drunkalog, because if they don't identify with us in our problem, if they don't identify with us in our drunkalog, if we don't tell them what we used to be like, they're not going to have any interest in our spiritual solution. And they're not going to have any interest in making the choice. Sponsorship is vital in the spiritual mystery of Alcoholics Anonymous. We act like we know what's going on here. I'm not being facetious or sarcastic or cynical, but we naturally act like, oh yeah, I'm having a spiritual awakening. Prove it. Well, I haven't had a drink in 18 years. I remember parading around my mom's living room when I was 2 years sober. I haven't had a drink in 2 years. I haven't had a drink in 2 years. And finally, my daughter, who was sitting there, said, oh, sit down, Dad. Aunt Susie's daughter hadn't had a drink in 2 years either. She's 2 years old. So there must be more to the spiritual awakening than just not taking a drink. Well, I go to meetings. I have a service job. I'm the grapevine rep or whatever. I had a sponsor. I had a couple guys ask me to sponsor them. I must be having a spiritual awakening. Maybe. All those things are right. All those things are good. But according to the big book, which saved my life, I think it's saving your life one day at a time, it doesn't say in step 12, having had a spiritual awakening as the result of not drinking. Not drinking's vital, but that's not the reason. It doesn't say having had a spiritual awakening by going to a meeting every day. really good. I went to meetings every day for years. I still go to 4 or 5 a week. But that's not why I'm having a spiritual awakening. Well, I'm having a spiritual awakening because I got a sponsor and I sponsor men. That's good. Let's see. Let me check here. Wait a minute. I got to. Oh, my buddy Daryl's on. Daryl was in my first home group back in Kansas City. Hi, Daryl. My sponsor Craig's here today. So see, I'm surrounded. I got a man here from my very first home group in 1981. I got my sponsor here who I'm going to be with next week. We're going to do a little 50-year celebration for him next week. Am I having a spiritual awakening because of Daryl and Craig? No. Now, Daryl and Craig know me really well. Am I having a spiritual awakening because of Tina? You all know Tina sitting across the room here. Tina's really glad I'm having a spiritual awakening. She's downright grateful. She told me so. Debbie G, it's not that funny. Oh, it is? Oh. Well, if Debbie G says so, then it is. Jane, you're piling on. Stop. Why am I having a spiritual awakening? What's the step say? What does step 12 say? Having had, which kind of means it's ongoing. We're not graduated. We're not done yet. Having had a spiritual awakening, my own personal, individual, God-given spiritual awakening. Luis is having a spiritual awakening. I've been spending some time with Luis lately. We're having a lot of good, energetic, spiritual awakening talks. I happen to know Luis is having a spiritual awakening. And you know why? As the result of these steps. We hear that so often. And I take it for granted. And I forget it. Oh, it's laying down there somewhere in a semi-conscious memory pile, buried under stuff like St. Louis Cardinals swept the Houston Astros. Oh, never mind. That's an outside issue. Hi, Kathy. Kathy's got on her Cardinal red today. Good for you, girl. Having had a spiritual awakening as not one of, not part of, not some of, having had a spiritual awakening as the result of these steps. And we're going to talk about step 3 today. And the reason I'm being a little overbearing with step 12 is when it says having had a spiritual awakening as the result of these steps, it means all of each step. And you say to yourself, oh my God, he's going on and on and on and on. He's droning. He's become a drone. Ooh. Having had a spiritual awakening as the result of each part of every step. And why that's important to me is I missed the first 3 words of step 3 for a long time. Does anybody know what the first 3 words of steps 3, the summary of step 3 on page 59? Does anybody know what the first 3 words are? Thank you, Robin. Robin was always that kid in class. She raised her hand whether she had the answer or not, didn't you? So did I, Robin. So did I. The first 3 words in step 3 are made a decision. You shrug, you say, yeah, whatever. So what? Well, because the step is very different. And step 3 is very unproductive. In fact, I will go so far as to say, in my experience, step 3 was counterproductive. It did not contribute to my spiritual awakening in the beginning. The way I decided, not even knowing I decided this, in my haste, in my desire to get done, in my desire to move on, in my desire to graduate from Alcoholics Anonymous. If you're quick, you can graduate before they find out and keep it anonymous. You know, I mean, all this insane thinking. Listen to the difference. This is step 3 without the first 3 words. Turn my will and my life over to the care of God as I understand Him. Oh, I'm going to do that in step 3. Don't really know what my will is, don't know what that means at this point. When you say my life, I don't know if that means a bicycle change or a dishwasher. But I'm going to do it because you said so. I'm going to turn my will and my life over to the care of God that I don't like, that I wish wasn't around, that I have no desire to be in a relationship with because I've heard that He's painful and punishing and probably not fair. But I'll do it because you said so. Am I exaggerating? A little. It's for effect, Al. Now listen to the difference. Based on the information I've received in the first 60 pages of the big book about step 1 and step 2, about my illness and their illness, the illness of the first 100 men and women that wrote this book, and everybody down the line since then, based on the information in the first 60 pages of the big book about step 1 and their spiritual solution, which they stumbled onto almost by accident, give God a little credit. They stumbled into the spiritual solution almost in spite of themselves. There's story after story after, in fact, almost every story in the big book is about a man or a woman dragging their feet when offered the spiritual solution, dying from alcoholism, losing everything in life worth having. But they're dragging their feet at that spiritual solution. But we have enough information in the first 60 pages, which we've talked about in the last 2 sessions of this workshop about step 1 and step 2. We become informed. We become able, equipped, informed to make an informed decision in step 3. It's not a complete blind shot. It's not a complete grope in the dark. Made a decision to turn my will and my life over to the care of God in step 3 is very different than I'm going to turn my will and my life over to the care of God in step 3, bada bing, bada boom. I'm going to make a decision to learn how to do something I had never done in my life before. Now, I had turned a particular situation over to God before, as in, get me out of this and I'll never do it again. The so-called foxhole prayer. Talk about a big book. There should be a big book of just foxhole prayers. Get me out of the back of this police car. I'll never do it again. Get me out of this motel room without finding out who she is. I'll never do it again. Get me out of this marriage and I'll never do it again. Get me out of this bankruptcy. I'll never do it again. On and on and on and on. That's different than saying, made a decision to learn how. See, the words to learn how are not in the step, but they're in the book. We're going to see that today on page 62 and page 63. That's why it's dangerous to work the step off of page 59. Page 59 is a summary of the step. It does not tell us anything about how to work the step, except in step 3, it does tell us we're going to make a decision. Guess what? When you make a decision, it's a choice. And we're going to find out in step 3, it's a choice to learn, to begin to learn. To begin, it's just a beginning. To begin to learn what to stop doing so that we can begin to learn what to start doing. You think you know that going into step 3? I didn't. And that's why we need a sponsor. Most alcoholics tend to be know-it-alls. I know that's a shock to some of you on here from Al-Anon. I know it's a shock to many of the alcoholics, but most of the alcoholics I know, particularly myself, tend to be know-it-alls. And that doesn't mean we have to know it all. It just means we want you to think we know it all, so you won't bother us with trivial stuff like your interest, your concerns, your sensitivities. I used to say I know before she would finish the sentence. Didn't have to know, just shut up. We got this great sponsorship example in the middle of Bill's story. When you read Bill's story in the big book, you may notice that 1/3 of his story begins with the first visit from Ebby, and continues for 5 or 6 pages. The story of Ebby first working with Bill, it's a sponsorship story. They don't call it sponsorship, but that's what it is. Ebby's visit and the subsequent visit in the hospital and so forth constitute about 1/3 of Bill's story. And on page 13, at the end of that sequence, Ebby's begun to explain what they then used from the Oxford group to have a spiritual awakening. And at the end on page 13, Bill says, talking about his friend Ebby, he says, "My friend promised," this is on page 13 in your book too, "My friend promised, when these things were done, I would enter upon a new relationship with my Creator." Bill doesn't want much to do with God yet. He was introduced to the idea a couple pages earlier. Why don't you choose your own conception of God? Ebby passed that on to him. Page 12. But this is the beginning of the stewardship of hope. We're going to help ourselves today make a decision, whether you're new in recovery, whether this is your first encounter with the third step, or whether you've been around here 3 or 4 or 5 decades like some of us. And we're going to look at step 3 again and realize, listen to this very carefully, realize how little we have to know. Really. We realize how little we really have to know to make an informed, effective step 3. Step 3, made a decision, page 59, the summary of the step, not the step. Made a decision to turn our will and life over to the care of God as we understood him. This is my experience. I realized reading this yesterday, Debbie, when I write this purpose of sponsorship for the rest of this series, I'm going to preface that paragraph by saying my experience in the purpose of sponsorship, because I can't speak objectively for all of you, but my experience is simply this. The objective of sponsorship in step 3 is to guide the sponsee. Call it guide, call it encourage. Don't call it harass or shame. I've done that. Harassing and shaming just isn't really effective. They'll agree with anything to get out of your presence and then shut the door. And you may never see them again. I've had that happen once or twice. The objective of sponsorship, in my experience, was step 3. Guide the sponsee to decide to seek God's care by doing 2 things. Number 1, claim the step 3 promises for themselves. And we're going to unpack those promises today on page 63. It's the top half of page 63. The only step in the book where the promises precede the step. It's kind of like an incentive program. It's kind of like, when we did this, here's what happened to us. If you do this, this could happen for you too, baby. The top of page 63, the promises of step 3 are like an incentive program, and the sponsor can use. And we're going to do this today. We're going to do step 3 today. We're going to take step 3 today. That's how easy it is. We're going to do step 3 before the top of the hour. Don't leave. You'll miss it. Stay with me, Dennis. Attaboy. The first thing is to help the sponsee, encourage the sponsee, guide the sponsee at least a little bit. We came out of step 2 with a come to believe that God could. The promises in step 3 kind of add to the come to believe from step 2. Come to believe that God would. We're going to see that in just a minute. Now, the first thing the sponsor can do is help the sponsee become incentivized, become encouraged, take the risk of making the decision to learn how to turn our will and our life over to the care of God in step 3 by claiming, maybe those promises could apply to me too. That's the first thing. Second thing, the sponsee can move forward with step 4 and the rest of the 12 steps when they take the step 3 prayer for what it is. Seriously, but it is a decision to seek. It is not a decision to know. I took it for a long time. Well, I'm supposed to know how to turn my will and my life over to the care of God. I took it a decision to know because that's my nature. I'm a know-it-all. Step 3 is not a prayer to decide to know, except to know where to go to get help, to know where to go to seek. Step 3 is simply a decision to seek. And the sponsor, using this book, using the words and the sentences and the paragraphs and the prayers and the promises in this book, can help the sponsee do step 3 in a way that contributes to their spiritual awakening, doesn't take away from it. Sharon, are you our first reader?
I am.
Page 60, my dear. We've all heard how it works read, the first 2.5 pages of chapter 5, and we always hear these ABCs read. Sharon, would you read, beginning with our description of alcoholic, that little paragraph, and then read the ABCs?
Happy to. Hi, guys. I'm Sharon, grateful alcoholic. Our description of the alcoholic, the chapter to the agnostic, and our personal adventures before and after make clear 3 pertinent ideas. A, that we were alcoholic and could not manage our own lives. B, that probably no human power could have relieved our alcoholism. And C, that God could and would if he were sought.
Thank you so much. If he were sought. Is that in your book too? It's evidently in Sharon's book. She just read it. It's in my book. Oh, it's in Hermione's book. We got a big thumbs up from the UK. Thank you, sweetie. Even on Virginia Beach, Lord have mercy. If he were so, who's going to do the seeking? Who's supposed to do the seeking here? This is where we move from the information gathering to the choice. We're going to see that step 3 is really made up of 2 or 3 choices. By the way, look at the A. That we were alcoholic and could not manage our own lives. That sounds like a summary of step 1, doesn't it? And if you've forgotten what that means, I recommend you turn to pages 30 and 31. Page 30, first page of chapter 3, more about alcoholism, tells us about the obsession, the illusion, and the delusion of control. The idea that we're in charge, the idea that we're not unmanageable. That is spelled out in black and white on page 30, based on everything we've learned in the book up to that point. And then he's got these examples on page 31. All the different ways Chapter 3 is not about people trying to stop drinking. Chapter 3 is about people trying to control their drinking. They're still living in step 1. I knew I was an alcoholic. I was diagnosed when I was in prison in 1967 by a qualified psychiatrist. He diagnosed me as an alcoholic. I've got it in writing. That was 1967. I drank 14 more years. Knowing I'm an alcoholic does not get me out of step 1. It just redoubles my effort to control. Some of you seem to have the same experience based on the way you're nodding your little chinny chin chin. Look at B. Now he throws us a bone here. He says probably. That's very kind of Bill. Thank you, Kathy. Probably no human power could have relieved our alcoholism. If you don't believe that, reread page 44 and 45. Page 44 is the first page of We Agnostics, where what other choice was presented. We talked about it last time, to be doomed to an alcoholic death, or, boy, this is a close call, live on a spiritual basis. Boy, that's a tough one. Reread 44 and 45. 45 tells us why they wrote the book, to help us find a power greater than ourselves that will solve our problem. And we're going to talk today about our problem on page 62, which is the prelude. It's the final preparation for step 3 is page 62. And then look, God couldn't would if he were sought. In just a minute, we're going to turn to page 62 and 63 and find out what that really means. And then please turn to page 95 for just a quick second. This is a big book study, and we do move around in the book. I'm confident you can find these page numbers. Page 95. Down in the lower half of the page. This is our trigger sentence. This is our lens through which we're going to look at step 3 today. At the bottom of the second to the last paragraph on page 95 is this simple little sentence. I quote, page 95, if he is to find God, the desire must come from within. If he is to find his relationship, if she is to find her relationship with the power greater than herself, the desire to do so, in other words, the desire to seek, God couldn't would if he were sought. The desire to do so must come from within. That is really good news, and if you're a sponsor like me, it's really frustrating. Do you hear that? I got bells going off in the background. Y'all just need to wait a minute. Hold on a minute. As Clouseau would say, the problem has been solved. If he is to find God, if she is to find God, the desire, I want to break this into 2 parts. The first part we're going to talk about is the last part. We're going to talk about the desire must come from within first, because that's the qualifier. Having had a spiritual awakening means we find a relationship with a power greater than ourselves that can help us. This is not some abstract principle. This is a fundamental tenet of the spiritual relationship. And it says right here, going into step 3 in our book in chapter 7, Working with Others, it cautions the sponsor. You can't make them want it. If you're sponsoring people, I'm going to say that again because it took me years. I would go, yeah, I know, and completely ignore it. Yeah, maybe you can't make them want it, but you don't know me. I can make them want. Well, what they wanted was another sponsor. I cannot give you a desire to find a relationship with a power greater than yourself. I'm powerless over your desire. There's a few of my sponsees on the meeting today. I know today I'm powerless over your desire to find a relationship, to seek a relationship, to have a relationship, to grow in the relationship. I'm powerless over your desire to enlarge your spiritual life. That is not our job as a sponsor. What we can do, how can we help someone develop the desire that must come from within? We begin by helping the sponsor remember the step one motivation of desperation. Read the first 60 pages again if you have to, carefully, and identify with the paragraphs that the sponsee identified, like page 18, page 52, as well as the step two motivation of hope. And as I mentioned earlier with the ABCs on page 60, I call these the power pages of choice. 30 and 31 summarize. They're not the full story on step one, but they summarize the control issue of illusion and delusion. Power pages of 30 and 31 for step one, the power pages of 44 and 45 for step two. We're motivated by desperation and hope. Step one gives us a motivation of desperation. Step two gives us a motivation of hope. And we come to admit, we come to accept, we become convinced based on those dual motivations. So on page 60, right after the ABC, as our book says, being convinced, we were at step three. Took 60 pages plus the forwards, the doctor's opinion. Guide the sponsee carefully to read and accept. After he says being convinced on page 60, there's 2 more pages of convincing. He knows he's writing to hard-headed alcoholic know-it-alls like me. And if you're not like me, just go along with the rest of us for the ride. Pages 60, 61, and 62 are an attempt to complete the convincing job. Only then can we really look at the bottom of 62 and 63 and get into our step three decision. So if you turn to page 62, page 62 is the summary page of our real diagnosis. Self-will run riot. Top of the page starts with selfishness and self-centeredness. 4 or 5 lines down, top of page 62, that's our real problem. And then in the middle of the page, Ian, how do you say your name? Is it Ian?
Yeah. Hello, it's Ian.
Yes, sir.
It's Ian.
Could you read for us the middle paragraph on page 60, Sue? So our troubles, we think, are basically of our own making. Could you read that paragraph?
I certainly can. So our troubles, we think, are basically of our own making. They arise out of ourselves, and the alcoholic is an extreme example of self-will run riot, though he usually doesn't think so. Above everything, we alcoholics must be rid of this selfishness. We must, or it kills us. God makes that possible. And there often seems no way of entirely getting rid of self without his aid. Many of us have had moral and physiological convictions galore, but we could not live up to them even though we would have liked to. Neither could we reduce our self-centeredness much by wishing or trying on our own power. We had to have God's help.
Really? Thank you so much, sir.
You're welcome.
Now, I will tell you, I'm very grateful to report that there's not one fiber of my being that wants to argue with that anymore. I'm here in front of you today telling you that finally, after all this time, there is not one fiber of my being that wants to argue with. We had to have God's help. But it was a long, 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 long time in my recovery before I could hear that sentence read or read that sentence and not go, Mm. Still, again, yet. Another day of needing God's help. I'm sure none of you go through that. I'm probably the only one whining about it. But notice what Ian just told us. We must be rid of this. Watch this carefully. Right in the middle of the page again. It's hard to miss, but you can do it if you're like me. But right in the middle of the page on 62, we had to be rid of this selfishness or it kills us. They mean it. We're selfish. We're so selfish, we don't know we're selfish. He says self will run riot, though the alcoholic usually doesn't think so. That's why 62 is the real diagnosis page. He's going to tell us on page 64 liquor was but a symptom. Doesn't mean liquor wasn't a problem, but once you stop once you stop drinking, well, maybe when you stop drinking, you can start to enunciate. I don't know. I'm still waiting. Self will run riot, though the alcoholic usually doesn't think so. As I said, I woke up today and there I was, capable of self will run riot. And then he says, and this is a very hopeful paragraph, God makes that possible. We had to reduce ourselves. He does not say we're going to eliminate self. He says we're going to reduce our self-centeredness. In other words, God gave us self. He gave us self-will. He gave us free will for a reason, but he also gave us some limitations. He gave us some wisdom on which to use it, with which to use it, with which to guide it, with which to limit it. We can't reduce I cannot reduce my self-centeredness by saying I'm going to reduce my self-centeredness, because if I don't, it'll kill me. It says God makes this possible. How's he going to do that? We don't know. It may have something to do with step 4 through 9. It may have something to do with working step 4 through 9. It's not a 3-step program, it's a 12-step program. This isn't a waltz. This is a recovery. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. Guide the sponsee. It doesn't make any difference to me if you have to spend a full weekend. Go on a retreat on Friday night, all day Saturday, and don't come home till sunset on Sunday. On page 62, if you have to do a weekend retreat with the sponsee, taking one word an hour or whatever it takes, we have to swallow the truth no matter how much we don't like it. And we have to help the sponsee swallow the truth about themselves, because if we don't come to believe to some degree the desperation that page 62 tells us about ourselves, we don't need page 63. It's not just a question of wanting it. If I don't come to believe the truth about page 62, I don't need page 63. Thank you very much. Guide the sponsee to make 2 vital decisions, one to stop doing, another one to start doing. Look at the bottom of page 62. Look at the bottom of page 62. This is the how and the why of it. One of the few times in the big book, why is explained. So hang on to this. This is a gem. It's one of the 5 or 6 times we get a why. Look at page 62, bottom paragraph. This is the how and the why of it. First of all, we had to quit playing God. That includes being a know-it-all. Why? It didn't work. It says so right there in the book. It didn't work. Oh my God, 39 years. I'm reading this for the first time and I'm 39 years old. My life is over as I know it. If I wasn't reading it, my life would have been over, period. First of all, 62 pages into the book. First of all, because of the information we've had in these first 62 pages on 1 and 2, we can now make an informed decision. We see the need to learn how to turn our will and life over to the care of God, because I've made a mess of it on my own. First of all, quit playing God. Can't get help from God when I still am God and don't need God. Cannot get help from God as long as I'm still, well, I know what's good for me. I know what's good for you too. Don't bother to ask. I'll tell you. I know what's good for everybody. I don't even know who they are, but I'm probably sure I could help somebody in Queens right now, Queens, New York. 1,000 miles away, but I know what's good for them. So the first thing we stop doing after we stop starting drinking, this works better if you're sober. First of all, we had to quit playing God. It didn't work. So what's the thing we start doing? Oh, next, he says, next. You see that? We decided that. Oh, wait, it's a choice. We're not even to the step 3 prayer yet, and he's already got us in a decision-making mode, that sneaky fellow. Next, we decided that what? Oh, God was going to be our director. Spend some time with the sponsee on these words. The book will speak for itself. The sponsee may or may not hear it. And you can add your own experience, like I'm doing a little bit of today with you from my own experience. You might say you can put your own personal flesh and blood on these black and white words, but the book will speak for itself. We're not making this stuff up. They weren't making it up. Most of the book is written in the past tense. They're basing this on their experience, from which they drew their strength and their hope. Bottom of 62 is huge. It's a major turning point in recovery. That one little, 6 lines, 7-line paragraph. Notice the bottom of page 62, this is the how and the why of it. Look at the last word in that paragraph, Kathy. Did you circle that one? Freedom, baby. That paragraph's a good meeting or two right there. This is the how and the why of it. Freedom. Freedom from what? Oh, let's read page 63 and find out. It's like Christmas. I got a present I didn't even know I was going to get. Page 63, if page 62 was a summary page of our real diagnosis, page 63 is the summary page of our real solution. God's care, remember the word on page 59 is care, made a decision to turn my will and my life over to the care of God. Care as in take care of that little baby that can't feed itself yet, that can't walk on its own yet, that can't even put on or take off its own diaper, much less its blankie or its onesie. God's care in the form of, we're going to see this in a minute in the step 3 prayer, God's power, God's love, God's way of life. You want to understand God? Start there. Erase your blackboard. Everything you ever thought you knew about God, nothing wrong with what you heard about God in church, but I'm saying for the moment, right for this moment, erase your blackboard. and pretend the only thing you know about God is what they call God's power. I don't know what that means, but it sounds pretty good. They seem to like it. God's love. Well, I'm not sure about that, but they sure seem to like it. And God's way of life. I don't know what that means, but they sure seem to like it. Pretend for a moment that's all you knew about your understanding of God, because that's what the step 3 prayer is going to promise. Page 63 is the summary page of the real solution that helps us decide to learn to seek. Remember C, ABC on page 60, God couldn't would if he were sought. We have to decide to seek. It's not automatic. That begins by not playing God, page 62. Helps us decide to learn to seek, to learn what to start doing. If we're going to stop playing God, what are we going to do instead? Well, let's find out. Because now we're going to grow not just the motivation of desperation from step 1 and the motivation of hope we borrowed from other people in step 2. Now we're going to start to grow our own motivation of hope. Guide the sponsee to accept and claim. Take them personally. The step 3 promises on the top of page 63. Luis, my brother, Luis is going to share the step 3 promises with us now, beginning on the top of page 63. Having made that decision on page 62, okay, I'm going to stop playing God. It didn't work. Now what do I do, Luis?
Luis Alcoholic. When we sincerely took such a position, all sorts of remarkable things followed. We had a new employer. Being all powerful, he provided what we needed if we kept close to him and performed his work well. Established on such a footing, we became less and less interested in ourselves, our little plans and designs. More and more, we became interested in seeing what we contribute to life. As we felt new power flow in, as we enjoyed peace of mind, as we discovered we could face life successfully, as we became conscious of his presence, we began to lose our fear of today, tomorrow, or the hereafter. We were reborn.
Thank you, Luis. I'm not going to say I'm ashamed anymore, but I'm still embarrassed to tell you how many years I went in recovery and didn't even know that paragraph was there. Somebody said, do the step 3 prayer. I said, where is it? They said, the middle of the page 63. I turned to page 63. I saw where it said, we're now at step 3. Boom. I didn't even know step 3 had promises. Maybe you didn't either. It's understandable. We are in a hurry. We're not only know-it-alls, we're impatient. At least I am. Look what Luis just told us. When we sincerely took such a position, did you see the word sincere? That doesn't mean perfect. It means best you can at the time, which means sincerely took such a position. We decided to stop playing God. As hard as it is to let go, pretending to me and you to be a know-it-all. When we sincerely decided to stop being a know-it-all, all sorts of remarkable things followed. And I've got a few notes for you to make for those of you that love marginalia. That's not a sexual term, it's just note-taking. Page 13 and page 51. There's a few examples of remarkable things happening earlier in the book. All these foreshadow step 3. Everything in the book up to this point really foreshadows page 63. We had a new employer, all powerful. Read page 45 and page 52. Provided what we needed, if, here's an if, it's conditional. We have a job to do. I can pray to God, but I still got to pay the electric company. Provided what we needed if we kept close to him and performed his work well. Oh, that's called work step 4 through 12, by the way. If you didn't know what that meant, if we kept close to him and performed his work well means, among other things, work steps 4 through 12. But look at page 14. I'm sorry, page 13 again, Bill's first experience with what became the 12 steps, as well as page 44. Louis said, established on such a footing. What footing? We're not playing God anymore. We're starting to seek help. That's all. That footing. We became less and less interested in ourselves, our little plans and designs. I recommend page 17 and page 49. More and more, we became interested in seeing what we could contribute to life. That means we're going to become givers, not just takers. We're going to become contributors, not just users. I recommend pages 19 and 20 and page 55. And then, of course, now watch this carefully, as we felt new power, we make a decision up here to get out of the way. We make a decision up here to learn how to get out of the way. And something starts happening down here, below the neck, in the heart, in the soul, in the body, in the emotions. As we felt, this is beyond thinking. We haven't even taken the prayer yet. This is just based on the hope of the promise, Lord have mercy. As we felt new power flow in, as we enjoyed peace, and keep in mind, this is them telling us what happened to them. This may not have happened to me yet, but this is them telling me what did happen to them when they did what we're about to do in the middle of page 63. As we felt new power flow in, as we enjoyed peace of mind, as we discovered we could face life successfully, put in parentheses, without booze and control. That's just a suggestion. You don't have to do that, but face life successfully without alcohol, drugs, and control. As we became conscious of God's presence, and that means something different to each and every one of us, but the presence is real. We begin to lose our fear. What fear? Oh, of today, tomorrow, and the hereafter, that's all. He says we begin to lose our fear. He doesn't promise us a fear-free life. But as we're going to find out next time in the fear inventory on page 68, fear ceases to be our higher power. We begin to lose our fear of today, tomorrow, and the hereafter. And I suggest page 57 for that one. Our little sentence from page 95 said, if he is to find God, the desire must come from within. We've been mostly talking about helping a sponsee get that desire. Now let's help him find God. Juanita? Come in, Juanita.
Juanita Alcoholic.
Juanita, you got your big book there?
I do.
Juanita's going to lead us, ladies and gentlemen, in the first step, personally, of finding the God of your understanding. We were now at step 3, Juanita, the middle of page 63. Lead us in the step 3 prayer, please.
All right. Many of us said to our Maker as we understood him, God, I offer myself to thee to build with me and do with me as thou wilt. Relieve me of the bondage of self, that I may better do thy will. Take away my difficulties, that victory over them may bear witness to those I would help of thy power, thy love, thy way of life. May I do thy will always. We thought well before taking this step, making sure that we were ready, that we could at last abandon ourselves utterly to him.
Thank you so much. It took me a long time to understand that second to the last sentence she just read. We thought well before taking this step. That's what this workshop today has really been all about. It's easy to do the step 3 prayer. It's easy to say the words, go through the motions, and say, I've done it. But when we prepare for it, and when we help the sponsee prepare for it by sincerely absorbing the truth in the big book, in the first 62 pages about step 1 and step 2, and really go back over page 62 and say, I can't, God can. I think I better learn how to let him. God, I offer myself to you, she said. Why? I'm going to unpack the step 3 prayer for a minute, make a few observations, and we'll be done by about 10 after Scott. I offer myself. This is an offering. It's not a control. It's a giving up. It's a giving over. It's a giving in. It's a giving to. We don't have to know what's going to happen. You're better off not knowing, because if you think you know, you'll get in the way of it. I offer myself because we're powerless and unmanageable. This is my responsibility in step 3. Number 1, I offer myself. Number 2, that I may better do your will. I've become willing to learn how to do that. I've become willing to learn what that means because I have come to believe, I'm still coming to believe, maybe God's way is better than my way. It's okay with me if you do step 3 on a maybe. It's okay with me if your sponsee does step 3. Well, maybe God's will is better than my will. Maybe it's better than hell no, not ever. Another thing I do in step 3, that I may bear witness to those I would help. That's a future consequence. And I am responsible for that part. I didn't do this. God's doing it. I'm participating, but God's running the show. Because we are willing to grow in faith. It's not enough just to come to believe. Believe is a head job. We take that prayer, we believe the truth of those promises, we're starting to have more than just a belief. We're starting to feel something called faith. We don't know for sure what it's going to be, but we're positive about it. And then the prayer ends with, may I do your will always. Well, that's a forward commitment, but it implies we're willing to learn to act in trust. Stop for 10 seconds and think of the one thing really bothering you right now, today, in your life, right this minute. Don't tell me you don't have one. Everybody's got one. Take 10 seconds and acknowledge something is really eating away at me today. I'm afraid, I'm annoyed, I'm ticked off. Don't hurt yourself, Hermione. You trust God with it or not? I didn't say you knew what God was going to do with it. May I do your will always. That's a lifelong learning process. If you're like me, you'll never get that perfect, but there's a willingness. We're going to see this over and over in 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. What is God's responsibility in the step 3 prayer? To build with me. It says so. To relieve me of the bondage of self. That's where the freedom on page. Draw a straight line from the word freedom on the bottom of page 62 to the middle of the step 3 prayer, bondage of self. We're seeking freedom from self-will run riot. He calls it self-will run riot on page 62. He calls it bondage of self on page 63. Same thing. Take away my difficulties. God's going to do that. I'm not going to do that. He's going to tell me what to stop doing so I can start doing. I'll become more and more aware of my choices, not just the choice in step 3. Step 3 is going to open up more and more choices going forward. We're going to see some next time in step 4. Take away my difficulties. Give me victory over them with God's power, God's love, God's way of life. And as Juanita said, we thought well before taking this step. It's called the first 62 pages of the big book. We thought well before taking this step is called the first 62 pages of the big book. And conversations with our sponsor, conversations with our sponsee. What doesn't make sense? What annoys you? What don't you believe? What makes you the worst? What makes you the most of everything in the first 62 pages? What are you the angriest about today? Let's talk about that, Carl. Well, it's the God thing. Let's talk about that, baby. Big Book's not afraid to talk about it. We shouldn't be afraid to talk about it. We thought well before taking this step, making sure we were ready. If we're not ready, we're still desperate and in delusion that we could at last abandon ourselves. That's more than surrender. We guide the sponsee in step 3 to begin to seek. Keep in mind, the verb in step 11 is still seeking. We're never going to get done seeking. But we guide the sponsee in step 3 to begin to seek a caring, helpful relationship with God by claiming the step 3 promises for themselves and then begin to turn our will and our lives over to the care of God in the initial abandonment. The initial abandonment. There are going to be more in every step. Self-will run right in step 3, prayer itself. In step 3, we decide to learn how to let God care for us. We implement our step 3 decision. We're going to implement the decision in steps 4 through 9, and then 10, 11, and 12, one day at a time. With God's power, God's love, seeking God's way of life, coming out of the step 3 prayer. There's a few observations. I'm not going to go through all these. If you have the handout, you can read them. If you don't have the handout, I suggest you get it because some of these are pretty good meditation. But I will say this, a problem with step 3, people say they're having trouble with step 3. My experience has been they're really having trouble with step 1 or 2. Acceptance of our powerless and unmanageability does not require our approval. No, I said, I said what I said. Acceptance of my powerlessness and my unmanageability does not mean I approve of it. It just means it's a fact. Step 1, admit our lack. Step 2, admit our need. Step 3, learn to seek. Decide to learn to seek. We meet the sponsee where they are in their desperation and offer them our hope. Relieve me of the bondage of self, it says, not the bondage of others, not the bondage of the economy, my job, or the DMV, or the insurance company. We'll deal with those later. Our motivation of hope in steps 1, 2, and 3, real simple. We desire the pain to stop, relief to begin. With the step 3 prayer, we decide to embark on our path of spiritual awakening. God's care enables us to overcome our reluctance to work, steps 4 through 9. God's care enables willingness to continue to seek and try in steps 10 through 12. Step 3 is the first time in the book we ask God for help. We're going to ask God for help over and over and over in step 4 and every step after that. But we begin in step 3. With step 3, we're willing to let go of the old idea that we don't need help. honest enough to admit we do need spiritual help, and open-minded enough to decide to seek spiritual help with step 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. And finally, in step 3, we decide to learn how to be forgiven. We decide to learn how. It may not happen overnight. We decide to learn how to be forgiven for the person we have been, amend the person we are, and become the person God wants us to be. So next time we'll pick right up with step 4, explaining how you made a self-appraisal from the little line on page 94. And for our closing prayer, we'll do step 3 again one more time. God, I offer myself to you to build with me and do with me as you will. Relieve me of the bondage of my own self, that I may better do your will going forward. Take away my difficulties, that victory over them may bear witness to those I would help of your power, your love, and your way of life. May I do your will always. Amen. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you very much, sir. That was fantastic. And now everybody can unmute and thank Bill.
Thanks, Bill.
Thank you,
God.
Bill.
Bill.
Thank you so much, Bill.
Thank you, Bill.
What was the bells and what was the time?
That was great.
Thank you, Bill.
Thank you.
Bill.